As you guys know, this week has really been focusing on mental health and trying to hit mental health from a bunch of different aspects. One of the things that we've kind of talked about a lot is the fact that really no matter what you're going through, you can't solve it by yourself. You can't talk to yourself about it. You can't get through it by yourself. You really need people to come alongside you and walk with you through a lot of these things. So tonight, I just kind of wanted to dig into that a little more. And so I'm joined by my best friend, producer extraordinaire, Aaron Parlier. So thank you for
Hey,
being here with me today.
happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So yeah, this we really just want to talk about, how what it's like walking alone versus what it's like walking with somebody. Me and a homie have been through a lot together.
That's the
Um,
truth.
yeah,
Mm.
this is my support right here, and I try to be the same for him. And I just really couldn't imagine going through a lot of the stuff that I've been through without having him in my corner. So to kick it off, Aaron, would you mind just like in your experiences, as much as you want to go into it, what is it like trying to walk through mental health kind of by yourself?
Yep. Yeah. So obviously, mental health could be a lot of different things. It could be depression, anxiety, OCD, all that stuff. My personal experience is in the depression and anxiety realm, and with something like that, like it just carries a lot of weight. It carries a lot of shame. Um, it carries a lot of you just end up really isolated really quickly, and that could be the absolute worst thing for you. So if you don't have a support system, you're literally just walking through it by yourself. Your head kind of becomes an echo chamber. There's no real like voice of voice of reason. Like, if you're if you're a Christian like I am, like you have God, but then without the community around you, like even that can get messed up just because you're so in your head over and over and over again. So to be able to walk in something like that is crazy. Like it's I've done it. I've had a couple times in my life where I've just been more isolated than others, and it's not good. It's tough to walk through.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you spend a lot of the time just constantly beating yourself up
Mhm.
with no one to really tell you, like, no, this is a situation. Yeah, it's a bad situation. It's crappy, but you are not necessarily to blame for this. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Yeah.
when you don't have that, you blame yourself, you beat yourself up, you tear yourself down, and I mean, like you're saying, you kind of force yourself into isolation almost. I
Mhm.
feel
It
like.
it it's a vicious cycle. Like you start off being depressed or being anxious, and that leads to like more, and I think maybe natural introspection of like, hey, what's going on with me? What's going on inside myself that I would feel this way? This is weird. But when that turns to shame, it just shames you to be like, well, I'm just different and no one gets me. And it's just a cycle of continually isolating yourself until you've just completely removed yourself from any sort of support system, anybody who cares about you. And it's sad, honestly. Like
Yeah,
I've seen other people go through something similar, and it just breaks my heart because it's hard to walk along somebody who's dealing with mental health because you always want to figure out like what's the right thing I can say to ease this burden. And I think a lot of people view it as just like, I can fix this situation. Like, I can, if you're sad, well, this one thing I can say, I can fix it. And I think the reality is that uh, you can't. A lot of times, like,
yeah,
a lot of time it's prayer, it's counseling. It sometimes it just takes time. I think the best thing you can do is just to be a brother. Like Dom, you've been like that to me so many times, where it's, I'm still on this road and I'm walking it, but you're walking it beside me.
mhm,
And like, you hold each other up. When somebody stumbles, you help each other up. And I think that is a really good way to look at what a healthy support system actually looks like, because otherwise you fall down, and like, some of us are, you deal with a lot, and so you get back up on your own, but eventually, like, you just, when you're by yourself, like, you're that only can that's not sustainable in the long run.
yeah, yeah. And you mentioned you don't always have the exact thing to say that's going to fix it. And I feel like that's a big thing to realize when you are someone's support. That's something I had to learn is like I'm not gonna have the correct answer, and that's okay. Like I don't need to have the correct answer. Like people really just want you in their corner, really.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
I just need someone that I can talk to about all the crazy stuff that's going on in my head and get it out. And they don't necessarily have to fix it, but the fact that they're there to talk to me
Mhm.
is it a lot of times that's enough. We
Yep.
can bounce things back and forth, and then an answer might come out of that. But you
Mhm.
being the support doesn't necessarily mean you have to be ready with an answer right there on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you definitely bring perspective in different situations. And a lot of times that's helpful because like it can lead to a lot of victim mentality.
Mm,
And so, and it's understandable. And so it's hard to address because you know, someone is in a really vulnerable situation and you don't want to like push them farther towards the edge, but at the same time, you don't want to enable this victimization of themselves, this just continued streak in their mind. So it's kind of like sharing grace and truth. You know, like you're gracious and you listen, like
mm,
you're hearing them out, you making sure they feel heard, and then you can give all you can really do is give a perspective of an outside situation. But I think it becomes a whole nother animal when someone who's dealing with mental illness becomes so entrapped within a victimhood mindset because everything at that point looks like just more of an attack on themselves, more an attack of their identity, and that it just kind of spirals downhill from there because you can't like you from there unless they have a different perspective, it's all they're going to see because it's just right in front of you like a piece of paper. And
mm.
it takes somebody to be like, hey, like let's move that, like what this is what I see. And I think that is helpful, especially in times where you're just overwhelmed mentally and you're just kind of losing it a little bit.
Yeah. But is there anything in your opinion that you think you can accomplish without a support system? You mentioned earlier, it does breed a little bit of self-reflection. So things like that are, I kind of look at that as that's good that you're able to self-reflect on your own without support. But is there any kind of pros to, not
Yeah,
necessarily having someone all the time?
I would say it's I would not say it's a pro of not having a support system. I really don't think there's a pro to not having one. But I
Mm,
do think that whoever is involved does bear some responsibility to like like if you and I are in a situation where I need support and I'm really struggling through something, like you can be there for me as a friend and as a brother, but I can't come to you for every single answer every single time because you got your own things going on. You
mm,
can't just there I can't just put all of my burden and weight on you. Like I have a responsibility to reflect, to really try and figure out what's going on. Like even like in my opinion, I had a hard time like late high school, early college going to people before I would go to God about it, and it didn't really make any sense
mm,
because like it's great that I have people around, but like it's God though. Like I should go there first.
mm.
And I think a lot of times in that situation, people become the answer in that person's mind. And that's obviously not a good thing because people fail. Like we're not perfect. And so when you put all of your hope in like I'm okay, I'm feeling really depressed right now. I need to call this person and they're not there or
Mm.
they're just, maybe they say the wrong thing. All of a sudden, your world is now crashing down twice because not only are you struggling, but you're also like, you're hoping this person is now showing up. And that's really dangerous as well. You don't want somebody you really have to like continue to fight, and it's your support system is there when you feel like you can't anymore, when you're tired. And that's I think that's one of the most important parts.
So not kind of looking at it like a dependency type of
Exactly.
thing. Like, yeah, that
Yeah,
makes
like
sense.
you're not codependent on this other person in
Mm,
order for you to get better. Like no one can really do that. Like I've been in and out of counseling since I was probably 13. And
mm,
I think the biggest thing I've heard every counselor say is you get out what you put in it, you
mm.
know? So like if you go into counseling and you're like, I screw this, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do any work. You're not going to get any better because that counselor can't actually do the work for you. It's you having to continue to try and endure and really like fight. It's like a lot of things in life. Like they don't come easy, and it's hard because you know I don't really know why certain people struggle with mental illness more than others. We live in a really broken world, and it's sad. Um, but your choice is to endure, to fight through, to lean into your support system, to lean into your faith,
Mm.
or just become a victim. And like I don't think in a right mind anybody wants to just should choose to become a victim.
Right, right. And I feel like the whole dependency thing can also kind of like burn out systems, which,
Oh
like
yeah,
you said, it leaves you in an even worse place, almost like you're falling twice now.
yeah. Well, it does more than that. Like you and I have even had times where I was down bad and I was leaning too much into you, and then you became down bad. So not only was I worse, but I kind of took you down with me. And
Mm,
it had to. I think it's really important, and this is a lesson that you and I had to learn, is you still have to have boundaries in those situations.
yeah,
Um, and it's really sad because like the other person is hurting, and they're often people you love, and so it can be really hard to say no. But you have to at some point in time, like because you're your own person with your own problems and your own struggles, and you can't always be that person. Like I believe no one is able to be that person all the time.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and you have your own mental health to look out for as well. So I'm not saying that it's the, well, screw this, I have my own problems. So it's much more of a like there's a lot of weight in those conversations. Like I have some friends who have just had like a really weighty week just in general. They're just heavier weeks than others. And like you can this weekend is needed so that they can like refresh, you know,
mm,
because that if you can't do that, if you can't take that step back and be like, I can't, like, then you're gonna burn out, and then your support system's gonna burn out, and it's not gonna be a good time.
that's a good point. I think balance is a really good key word to kind of use there because, like you said, if you're not careful, you can pull someone else, or
Mhm.
someone else can pull you, and then now your support system is kind of like in shambles, and nobody knows what's going on.
Yep.
But you're right; it's a learned process.
Yeah.
And I think it's important too to kind of understand, like if you're going into a situation where okay, I'm going to be this support system for someone else, you kind of have to go into it looking at it like there's going to be some learning involved here.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm not a counselor. I'm a
Exactly.
support. So I have to learn what that means. They have to learn what that means. If we're also like switching the roles and you're also my support, then you have to learn that side of it too. So
Mhm.
it's not like a easy thing almost. It's not like, hey, I got my buddy over here. Everything's good
Yep.
now. It takes learning.
It's
But
life. It's
yeah.
just like any other relationship in life. Like it has to be worked on. I think it's even important to, I can speak for myself that when I really, really struggle with depression, like you have such tunnel vision. Like you can't see anything else other than what your problems are and your sadness and everything. And the biggest things for me was just being around friends and like having a good time and laughing.
Mm,
Like there is so much benefit to that, where like even if it's not an ignorance thing, because you're not just like choosing to like I'm going to ignore that I'm sad,
yeah.
but you're saying that okay, this is tough right now, this is hard, but I'm going to be with my friends right now, and I'm going to laugh, and we're going to play some video games. Like back in the day, Dom and I would just play FIFA, and
Yeah.
he would lose every time, because
I
he was
don't know
very
about that. I don't know about that.
no, I was super trash at FIFA. 100%. I was. But just like those times where I could make jokes, the times I could just hang,
Mm,
I think were really important because it's a way for everybody, and you can't just dwell in that place, like if you dwell there, you're gonna stay. Like
yeah, yeah.
it's kind of like people who are, removed. Like I have a hard time with that sometimes, being removed from at least that deep depression, but still struggling. Sometimes when I think back on that and I dwell on it, all of a sudden I'm sad again because I'm dwelling on something that I shouldn't be dwelling on anymore. And
Mm,
that's it. It's hard because likely, and like I'm not a counselor either, so it's just based on my experience, but likely that like if you're dealing with someone who's really depressed or really anxious, it's going to look either a lot like this tunnel vision where they can't see anything, or it's going to look like this where they're ignoring the whole thing.
yeah.
And so to be able to approach them in a loving and gracious way and be like, hey, do you want to hang out? Like, let's go see a movie, let's go get some dinner, and maybe even having time to be like, talk to me, but not like that whole hangout time just being consumed by that
Mm,
is, I think, important. And it kind of goes back to boundaries at that time because, like, again, you can't just do that the whole time. That's not even really a friendship at that point. Like
yeah,
it's just codependency.
yeah. So what would you say are like some immediate benefits that you've noticed in your own life from having no one and just trying to figure everything out in your own head to when you first started to have support, whether it was counseling, me or whatever. Like what are like immediate benefits?
Well, I will say, when you first try it, at least in my experience, understand that it's going to be hard, because it's, at least for me, it's hard to really get that honest and vulnerable about how I'm feeling because I feel nuts in my own head. So then how do I say this out loud to somebody? But
Yeah.
when you take that step and you've got people around you who are gracious and loving and are gonna like you, you're like your stereotypical safe space, but like it really is because like there's such a freedom and just like I don't have to hide this anymore. Like I'm able to talk about it.
Mm,
Uh, like I'm able to be honest, and at that point, I think you're the most seen that you've probably been in a long time, and I think a lot of people, whether they know it or not, just really want to be seen, want to be understood, and it's a process because it goes back and forth. At least for me, like I would be, some days when I was going to counseling, I was ready. Like I'd done my homework, I was ready to go in there and be like, let's figure this thing out.
mm,
And then other days I didn't want to get out of bed, and so like it's not linear. Healing isn't linear in my opinion. There might be some scientific stuff to back me up there, but I'm not a scientist, so I don't know. But from what I remember, like it's not just a straight line. Like it's not like I make this decision and now we're good. Like
mm.
it's up and down. Like there's mountains and there's valleys in it. um, but I think as you get into a rhythm, like establishing a healthy rhythm of, talking with your friends, talking with your counselor, journaling is amazing. It's the one thing that everyone hates to do. I know how good it is, and I still hate to do it.
I
Like
write music
I,
and I can't stand journaling.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like lyrics be in my notepad on my phone because I don't want to write them
Uh-huh.
because my handwriting's trash. But like something about actually writing it down and getting your thoughts out somewhere, like that was helpful for me. Just to like I would write prayers down just because I felt like there was so much in my head that I couldn't say that I just started writing it. And as I would write it, I could see the thought processes kind of start to form, but I could also see like, oh, hey, like I'm seeing a theme here. Like, let me pray about this. Let me bring this to my counselor. Let me think about like let me process this with a friend. And I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's the biggest thing for me is just, I mean, like you said before, nothing makes sense to me up here. So how can
Yeah.
I tell anybody else what's going on?
Mhm.
But yeah, just having that openness with someone to be able to say, okay, I'm about to tell you something and it's probably not gonna make
Mhm.
no sense. And then another person being like, okay, bet, well, let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
that's
had that conversation with you a bunch.
yeah.
Like, I feel like I'm wilding. I don't know what's going on.
But it's such a benefit though, and I feel like it's such a weight that lifts too.
Mhm.
Where
Yeah,
it's just
because
like I don't have to
it's
hide.
shame. Like
Yeah.
there's an element of shame where it's like I'm nuts, so I'm not going to tell anybody because I
Mhm.
don't want them to know. And in reality, like I don't think I think regardless of whether like someone's feelings are totally accurate or not, you have to be able to face them at some point. Like
Yeah.
you have to be able to like whether this is rational or not, this is how I feel because that's your first step. If you can't acknowledge how you feel, you can't make a decision of whether it's rational or not.
Mhm. Yeah.
So like you can't really take any steps forward from that, and that's just shame that's trying to isolate you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I feel like this has been kind of insightful. I mean, I know me and you go way back or whatever, but
We-
but I feel like
This,
it was
this is just a normal Friday for us.
basically, yeah. But it's some good information though. Especially for someone who may not have a support system, but
Yeah,
may not feel like this is something that I can possibly do. Like especially like we both said, I feel crazy. I don't want to tell anybody this.
yeah,
No one's
yeah,
gonna listen to me. No,
yeah.
somebody will listen to you. It might be tough to find that person, but
Hmm.
they're there. So
Yeah.
like in closing, do you have any advice for someone that may be going through something who may want a support system but has no idea how to like make the first step in trying to find one?
Yeah, yeah. I have advice for that, but I also have advice for the caretaker, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
So for someone just like trying to walk through that, like it's as like it's really hard to make the first step, especially like I'm really introverted. So like if I see somebody and I got to talk to them, like I am terrified to open my mouth. Like I'm definitely hiding in a corner and just chilling. Um, but I would just encourage you that like taking that step is like it's such a monumental step. Like it deserves to be celebrated. It's that big of a deal that you're willing to acknowledge to, you know, your friends, your family, whatever, that you are like you're struggling. Like that's a really good thing to acknowledge and to admit and to be vulnerable. On the back end of that, understand that not everyone will receive that well. And
Yeah.
so don't put all of your hope in that. Like I remember with my parents, like when I first started dealing with depression, like my family didn't have any sort of context for mental illness. And so my parents obviously loved me so much, but the way they responded at the time wasn't it just wasn't perfect. And I was at a point in time where I didn't even understand what was going on and I expected it to be perfect. And so as a result, I spiraled. And I think it's important to as you're receiving grace, as people are being gracious to you and being like, hey, it's okay. Like, let's talk about this. Be gracious to them that they're not going to say everything right. They're not going to have all the answers. I think that's important. For people who are the support system, this is really, really close to my heart. Just because I've been in situations and I've almost been in other situations where like if you're actually concerned that someone who you're supporting might be taking their own life, like please get help. And not like it's beyond your control. Like I really hurt for situations like that.
Mhm.
Um, because it's so sad and you know it's hard because as someone who's been on that side of things, uh, you're really fearful because you're like, well, am I betraying this person? And it's really hard and heavy, but in that moment, I think you really have to understand like the weight of the situation. Like at that point, like I don't really care if this person hates me for the rest of their life because I'm making this decision right now to try and help them from potentially harming themselves or others. That's a really hard thing, and I know that's really heavy, but sometimes in support systems, that's those are real things that happen. And so I think it's just I would encourage anybody, like, seriously, like if you've got a friend and this friend just didn't acting right, ask some really intentional questions. And like
Mm,
if it's serious enough, please get help. Because I think that I would hope and pray that later they'll thank you.
yeah, yeah. That's a big one, and it's like you said, it's one of those uncomfortable ones. But yeah, once you're at that point, like you said, it is kind of out of your hands, and you just kind of got to do what you got to do to make sure they're okay at the end of the day. You know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
well, yeah. Again, Aaron, thank you so much for being here and having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for
And
having me.
yeah, yeah, of course. And thank you for everyone that's viewing. I hope that you learned something today. Whether you're going through something and you feel alone, or whether you know someone that's going through something and you don't exactly know how to help, I hope that you learned something here. So yeah, with that, we're gonna go ahead and sign off. Again, just so everybody knows, we are not having our normal big show this Saturday. It's going to be next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you're there, adjust your schedules however you need to do it, and we will see you then. So until then, y'all take it easy.
Love y'all.